The dutiful daughter. The aroma of cardamom and cinnamon filled the Sharma household as Mira carefully stirred the simmering pot of chai. Early morning light filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow across her face as she worked. At 32, Mira carried herself with quiet grace, her movements precise and deliberate. The household would soon awaken, and as always, she wanted everything to be perfect. "Betty, you're up so early again," came a gentle voice from the doorway. Mira turned to see her mother-in-law, Sunita, wrapped in her favorite shawl. "Good morning, Ma." Mira smiled, pouring the fragrant tea into Sunita's favorite cup. "I wanted to prepare everything before everyone wakes up. Baba has his doctor's appointment today." Sunita shook her head with admiration. "What would we do without you? 5 years in this house and you've become its very heartbeat." Mira lowered her eyes modestly, but the compliment warmed her. The Sharma family had embraced her completely. Sunita and Mohan, her in-laws, Vikram, her husband, and Vikram's younger sister, Priya, who was visiting from university. They had given her a home when she felt most adrift, and in return, she had devoted herself to their happiness. "Vikram is still asleep?" Sunita asked, sipping her tea. "Yes, he was working late on the hospital cases. I didn't want to disturb him. Such a dedicated doctor, my son, and such a perfect match you two are," Sunita said with obvious pride. "The stars aligned when your families arranged this marriage." Mira nodded, turning back to prepare breakfast. Marriage to Vikram had indeed been unexpected. A union arranged quickly after her family fell on hard times. The Sharmas were respected in their community. Mohan was a retired judge, and Vikram was becoming a renowned cardiologist. They had welcomed Mira despite her family's diminished circumstances. By mid-morning, the household was fully awake. Mira helped her father-in-law prepare for his appointment, gathering his medical files and ensuring he had taken his medications. Vikram appeared in freshly pressed clothes, his kind eyes finding Mira's across the room. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked quietly, accepting the breakfast she had kept warm for him. "Enough," she replied with a small smile. "Your mother said you were up past midnight with those patient files." "The cardiac unit is overflowing," he sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "But I've taken the afternoon off. I thought we could visit that bookshop you mentioned." Something flickered in Mira's eyes. Surprise, perhaps gratitude. These small gestures were characteristic of Vikram. While not overtly romantic, he noticed her needs, her whispered desires. Later that morning, while Vikram drove his parents to the hospital, Mira found herself alone with Priya, who was helping organize the storage room for her mother. "Didi, how do you do it?" Priya asked suddenly, watching Mira meticulously catalog old family albums. "Do what?" "Make everyone so happy, be so perfect all the time." There was genuine curiosity in the young woman's voice. Mira paused, considering the question. "I'm not perfect, Priya. I just try to be present, to be useful. But don't you ever want more? To travel like my friend's sisters-in-law? To work outside the home?" Mira carefully placed an old album on the shelf. "This is enough for me," she said softly. "Your family has given me everything." Yet as she turned away, something in her expression suggested otherwise. A fleeting shadow, a moment of wistfulness that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Priya, young and observant, noticed but said nothing. That evening, as Mira helped Sunita prepare dinner, she heard laughter from the living room. Vikram was showing his father a video on his phone, their shoulders touching, expressions mirroring each other in amusement. A familiar ache bloomed in Mira's chest. Not unhappiness exactly, but something like nostalgia for a life she hadn't lived. "Mira," Vikram called, looking up with warm eyes. "Come see this." She wiped her hands and joined them, fitting herself carefully into the family circle. As always, they made space for her, welcomed her, loved her in their way. And as always, she responded with devotion, pushing down the whispers of her heart that occasionally asked if devotion alone was enough. The faded photograph. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Sharma house as Priya continued her mission to organize the family storage room. College had taught her efficiency, and she was determined to transform the cluttered space before returning to her dormitory next week. "Ma, what should I do with these old books?" she called out, lifting a stack of dusty novels. Sunita appeared at the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "Those were your father's law books. Keep them aside, he still references them occasionally." As Priya moved the heavy tomes, a thin envelope slipped from between the pages of a weathered volume on constitutional law. It fluttered to the ground, yellowed with age and slightly wrinkled at the edges. Curious, she picked it up, noticing it had never been sealed. Inside was a photograph and what appeared to be a handwritten letter. The photograph showed a younger Mira, her hair longer, her smile wider than Priya had ever seen it, standing beside a handsome young man with kind eyes and a confident stance. They were in what looked like a college courtyard, autumn leaves scattered at their feet. Their shoulders touched slightly, suggesting an intimacy that made Priya pause. "Ma," she called out softly, "come look at this." Sunita crossed the room and took the photograph, adjusting her reading glasses. Her expression shifted from curiosity to confusion. "That's Mira," she said slowly. "But who is?" She stopped suddenly, her eyes widening in recognition. "That's Nikhil, your father's nephew, cousin Nikhil. The one who died in the Kashmir avalanche?" Priya asked, trying to recall the family member she'd never met but had heard stories about. Sunita nodded, her fingers trembling slightly as she unfolded the letter that had accompanied the photograph. Her eyes scanned the page and Priya watched as her mother's expression transformed from confusion to shock. "What is it, Ma?" Sunita shook her head slowly, refolding the letter. "It's personal. I shouldn't have read it." But Priya could see that whatever was written there had disturbed her mother deeply. "Is it about Didi? And cousin Nikhil?" Sunita sat heavily on a nearby chair, still holding the photograph. "This letter, it's from Mira to Nikhil, written just days before the accident. They were..." She hesitated, searching for words. "Very close, it seems." "Close? You mean they knew each other before she married Vikram?" Priya's voice rose with curiosity. "More than knew each other," Sunita whispered. "According to this letter, they were in love, planning a future together." The revelation hung in the air between them. Priya tried to reconcile this information with the Mira she knew. Devoted wife to her brother, perfect daughter-in-law to her parents. "Does Vikram know?" she asked finally. "I don't know," Sunita admitted, looking troubled. "Your brother and Mira's marriage was arranged quickly after Nikhil's death. Her family was struggling financially after her father's business failed. We had known them socially for years and the match seemed suitable. But if she loved cousin Nikhil," Priya began, "then what is her marriage to your brother?" Sunita finished, voicing the question that troubled them both. Later that evening, the family gathered for dinner as usual. Mira had prepared all of Mohan's favorites, knowing he was tired after his doctor's appointment. The conversation flowed naturally, Vikram discussing his patients, Priya sharing university stories, Mohan commenting on a legal case in the news. But Sunita was uncharacteristically quiet, her eyes frequently drifting to Mira with new scrutiny. Mira noticed. "Is everything all right, Ma? You've barely touched your food." Sunita startled slightly. "Just tired, Betty. The storage room had more dust than I expected." After dinner, when Mira and Vikram retreated to the veranda with their evening tea, Sunita pulled Priya aside. "We cannot mention this to anyone," she whispered urgently. "Not until I understand what it means." "But shouldn't Vikram know?" Priya insisted. "If Mira married him while loving someone else..." "We don't know the full story," Sunita interrupted. "And your brother, he adores her. I won't disturb their happiness without understanding more." That night, unable to sleep, Sunita crept back to the storage room and retrieved the letter. Reading it again by the dim light of her bedside lamp, she traced Mira's passionate words with trembling fingers. "My dearest Nikhil, by the time you return from Kashmir, I will have spoken to my parents. No more hiding, no more waiting. Whatever challenges come, we will face them together. 5 years of friendship has grown into a love I cannot, will not deny any longer. Come back to me safely, and we will begin our life together at last." The letter was dated just 3 days before the avalanche that took Nikhil's life. 6 months later, Mira had married Vikram. The next morning, tension simmered beneath the household's routine. Sunita watched as Mira helped Mohan with his physiotherapy exercises, noting her gentle patience, her genuine concern. Later, she observed Mira and Vikram in the kitchen, preparing lunch together, the comfortable silence between them, the way Vikram's hand occasionally brushed against Mira's, the small smile she gave him in return. Was it all a performance? Sunita wondered. Had the past 5 years been nothing but duty for Mira? The thought filled her with both sadness and indignation. When Priya entered the kitchen, her eyes met her mother's, full of unasked questions. The weight of their discovery pressed down on them both, threatening the harmony of a home built on what they now feared might be an unspoken compromise. That afternoon, when Meera went to the market, Sunita found herself standing outside her son's study, the letter clutched in her hand, torn between protecting him from a painful truth and revealing a secret that might already be poisoning his marriage without his knowledge. Shadows of the past, the market bustled with activity as Meera moved from stall to stall, selecting vegetables with careful precision. 5 years of marriage had taught her the preferences of each family member. The slightly underripe tomatoes Mohan preferred, the fresh coriander Sunita loved, the green chilies that Vikram insisted made any dish better. She performed this ritual twice weekly, finding comfort in the routine. "Meera? Meera Sharma?" A voice called from behind her, startling her from her thoughts. She turned to find Anjali, an old college friend she hadn't seen in years. Time had added streaks of silver to Anjali's hair, but her smile remained unchanged, warm and slightly mischievous. "Anjali." What a surprise. Meera embraced her friend, genuine pleasure lighting her features. "Look at you." Anjali stepped back, appraising her, still as beautiful as ever.
"How long has it been?"
7 years. Almost 8, Meera corrected softly. "Not since graduation." They moved to a small tea stall at the edge of the market, falling into conversation as if the years between them had never existed. Anjali spoke of her marketing career, her recent divorce, her plans to move abroad. Meera listened, offering sympathy and encouragement, sharing edited highlights of her own life, her marriage, her in-laws, the charity work she had recently begun at the local women's shelter. "You know," Anjali said suddenly, stirring her tea, "I still think about those days sometimes. The 4 of us, you, me, Rohan, and Nikhil, studying under that big banyan tree." She paused, watching Meera carefully. "I was in Kashmir last month. I visited the memorial." Meera's hand stilled, her cup hovering mid-air. The name she hadn't heard spoken aloud in years hung between them. "It's a beautiful spot," Anjali continued gently, "overlooking the valley. They've planted flowers, yellow marigolds." "His favorite," Meera whispered, almost involuntarily. Anjali reached across the table, squeezing Meera's hand. "I never got to tell you how sorry I was. Everything happened so quickly afterward. Your father's business troubles, your sudden marriage. We all worried about you." Meera withdrew her hand carefully, composing herself. "It was a difficult time, but the Sharmas have been good to me. Very good. And Vikram? He treats you well?" "Of course," Meera replied, perhaps too quickly. "He's a good man, kind, respected." Anjali studied her friend's face. "But do you love him, Meera?" "After Nikhil—" "That was a lifetime ago," Meera interrupted firmly. "We were young. Dreams change. People change." But as they parted ways, promising not to lose touch again, Meera felt the careful wall she had built around her memories begin to crack. The walk home seemed longer than usual, her basket of vegetables suddenly heavy in her arms. Meanwhile, at the Sharma household, Sunita had made her decision. After hours of internal debate, she showed the letter to her husband, seeking his counsel. Mohan adjusted his reading glasses, his judicial expression firmly in place as he examined the evidence before him. When he finished reading, he looked up at his wife with troubled eyes. "Where did you find this?" "In your old law books. Priya discovered it yesterday." Sunita sat beside him on their bed. "What should we do, Mohan? Should we speak to Vikram?" Mohan folded the letter carefully. "Do you remember when Nikhil died?" "Of course. The entire family was devastated. Your brother never recovered from losing his only son. And do you remember how Vikram was afterward? How he threw himself into that medical mission in the same region? How he insisted on helping with the rescue efforts?" Sunita nodded slowly. "He was heartbroken. He and Nikhil were more like brothers than cousins." "Yes," Mohan said thoughtfully. "They shared everything growing up. And Vikram, he always knew when Nikhil was keeping secrets." He tapped the letter. "I don't think this will surprise our son as much as it has surprised us." That evening, as rain began to fall outside, Meera sat alone in the bedroom she shared with Vikram, an old wooden box open before her. Inside were the few mementos she had allowed herself to keep. A pressed flower, a university medal, a small stone from a riverbank, and a folded piece of paper, Nikhil's last letter to her, received the day before news of the avalanche reached them. Her fingers traced his handwriting as memories flooded back. Nikhil's laugh, his passion for mountain climbing, the way he would quote poetry when they walked together on campus. They had met in their first year, friendship blooming gradually into something deeper, something they had kept private until they were certain. So certain, in fact, that Nikhil had spoken to his cousin about it. I told Vikram about us, Nikhil had written in that final letter. I needed his advice about approaching your father. You know how traditional your family is, and with your father's business struggles, I feared he might not approve of a relationship with a student mountaineer with no fortune to his name. But Vikram was encouraging. He said love deserves a chance, that he would support us. Come to think of it, he wasn't surprised at all. Said he'd seen it in my eyes whenever I mentioned your name. That's Vikram for you. He always sees what others try to hide. A soft knock interrupted her memories. Hastily, Mira closed the box and slid it under the bed before calling, "Come in." Vikram entered, still in his hospital clothes, his face tired but his smile genuine. "You're back from the market. I thought we might have dinner out tonight. Just the two of us." Mira studied her husband's face, the kind eyes so similar to his cousin's, the same strong jawline, the same gentle manner. Yet where Nikhil had been impulsive and passionate, Vikram was steady and thoughtful. Where Nikhil had dreamed aloud, Vikram built quietly. "Is everything all right?" he asked, noticing her expression. "Yes," she said, rising from the bed. "I ran into an old friend today, Anjali, from university." Something flickered in Vikram's eyes. Understanding, perhaps. "Ah, and did you have a good talk?" "We did. She mentioned..." "She visited the memorial in Kashmir." Vikram was silent for a moment. Then he crossed the room and sat beside her on the bed. "It's been a long time since you've spoken of him." The simple acknowledgement, so direct, so unafraid, broke something open inside Mira. "I saw him everywhere today," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "In the market, on the street, in my memories." Vikram took her hand, his touch gentle. "Some days are like that. The past refuses to stay where we've put it. Do you ever regret it?" Mira asked, suddenly looking up at him. "Marrying me? Knowing what you knew?" His answer was interrupted by Priya's voice calling them to dinner. The moment broken, they rose together, Vikram still holding Mira's hand as they walked toward the door. "We should talk," he said quietly. "After dinner. There's something you should know, unknown to both of them." Sunita stood in the hallway, the discovered letter now burning in her pocket. Her own questions about to collide with truth that had remained unspoken for 5 long years. The unraveling truth dinner that evening was a study in unspoken tension. Priya pushed her food around the plate, avoiding eye contact with Mira. Sunita served with mechanical efficiency, her usual warmth noticeably absent. Mohan observed everyone with a judge's careful scrutiny, while Vikram, sensing the strange atmosphere, attempted to fill the silence with stories from the hospital. Only Mira seemed truly focused on the meal itself, ensuring everyone's glasses remained filled, offering second helpings, attending to the family's needs with her characteristic attentiveness. Yet beneath her composed exterior, questions tumbled through her mind. Why had Vikram asked if she regretted their marriage? What did he need to tell her, and why was Sunita watching her with such guarded eyes? After the dishes were cleared and Mohan retired to his study, Sunita approached Mira in the kitchen. "Betty, could you join us in the living room? There's something we need to discuss." The formality in her mother-in-law's tone sent a chill through Mira. She dried her hands slowly, preparing herself for whatever confrontation awaited. In the living room, she found Priya perched anxiously on the edge of the sofa, while Vikram stood by the window, his back to the room. Mohan entered behind her, closing the door with deliberate care. "Please sit," Sunita said, gesturing to an armchair. Mira complied, folding her hands in her lap to hide their trembling. "Has something happened?" Sunita withdrew an envelope from her pocket and Mira's heart froze. Even before her mother-in-law spoke, she recognized what it was. The missing letter she had searched for frantically after moving into the Sharma home, eventually convincing herself it must have been lost during the hasty packing of her belongings. "Priya found this yesterday," Sunita explained, her voice carefully neutral. In your father's old law books. Vikram turned from the window, his expression unreadable as he looked at the letter in his mother's hand. It appears, Sunita continued, that before you married Vikram, you were involved with Nikhil. Deeply involved. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Meera looked from Sunita to Mohan, then to Priya, whose eyes shone with a mixture of confusion and hurt. Finally, her gaze settled on Vikram. Yes, she said simply. I loved Nikhil. We were planning to announce our relationship to both families when he returned from Kashmir. Sunita's composure wavered. Then why did you marry Vikram? Was it for financial security? Because your family was struggling? Ma! Vikram interrupted sharply, moving toward them. That's enough, but Meera raised a hand, stopping him. It's a fair question, she said softly. One I've asked myself many times. She took a deep breath. After Nikhil died, I wanted nothing. Not comfort, not future, certainly not marriage. I was hollow. Then why accept our son's proposal? Mohan asked gently. Meera looked directly at Vikram as she answered. Because he didn't propose love. He proposed healing. A silence fell over the room as everyone absorbed her words. Vikram moved to stand beside her chair, his presence a silent affirmation. When Nikhil died, Meera continued, Vikram was the one who came to my family's home. Not with flowers or platitudes, but with Nikhil's journal. He knew about us. Nikhil had confided in him. Her voice softened with the memory. Vikram sat with me for hours as I read Nikhil's words as I grieved. He didn't try to fix my pain. He simply witnessed it. Vikram placed a hand on her shoulder. When your father's business collapsed a few months later, he explained to his family, I saw an opportunity, not to replace Nikhil, but to protect what he had loved most in this world. So our marriage began as, what, charity? Sunita asked, struggling to understand. No. Meera shook her head firmly. It began as friendship, as mutual respect, as two people who had both lost someone irreplaceable. Vikram knelt beside her chair, taking her hand in his. I told Meera exactly what I was offering, a home, security for her family, companionship, and what I was asking in return. Her presence, her partnership in building a life together. Not love. I never asked for what I knew she had given to Nikhil. But all these years, Priya interjected, you've seemed so perfect together. A small smile touched Meera's lips. Because we built something real. Something honest. I knew about the letter, Vikram admitted quietly. Meera told me she had written to Nikhil just before the avalanche. She feared it was lost when she moved here. I looked for it many times, wondering if finding it might help her find closure. Mohan leaned forward in his chair. Son, why didn't you tell us any of this? Vikram looked at his father with steady eyes. Because it wasn't my story to tell. And because I knew how it might appear, that Meera had settled that our marriage was founded on convenience rather than choice. Wasn't it, though? Sunita pressed, still troubled. At first, perhaps, Meera acknowledged. But Vikram gave me something I never expected. She turned to face her husband fully. Space to grieve. Permission to remember. And slowly, without demands or expectations, a new kind of love began to grow between us. Vikram's eyes held hers. Years of unspoken understanding passing between them. I never wanted to replace what you had with Nikhil. I just wanted to build something different. Something ours, and have you? Sunita asked softly. Built something real? Instead of answering immediately, Meera reached into the pocket of her kurta and withdrew a folded paper, worn at the creases from frequent handling. She handed it to Vikram. What's this? He asked, unfolding it carefully. A letter I wrote to you last year on our anniversary, Meera explained. I never found the courage to give it to you. As Vikram read silently, his expression shifted from curiosity to deep emotion. When he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. You never told me, he whispered. Some things are harder to say aloud than others, Meera replied, her own eyes glistening. Priya leaned forward, curiosity overcoming her earlier discomfort. What does it say? Vikram cleared his throat, but instead of reading the letter, he simply said, It says that grief doesn't diminish love, it transforms it. That what began as duty has become choice. That every morning Meera chooses to stay, not because she made a promise 5 years ago, but because she wants to build tomorrow with me. Sunita's hand flew to her mouth, her earlier suspicions dissolving in the face of this revelation. Mohan nodded slowly, as if a puzzle had finally been solved to his satisfaction. "I loved Nikhil," Mira said, her voice steady now. "I will always carry that love. But I also love Vikram differently, but no less truly. He never asked me to forget my past. Instead, he helped me build a future from its ashes." As the truth settled around them, the tension in the room gradually dissipated. Priya wiped tears from her cheeks. Mohan cleared his throat several times, and Sunita reached for both Mira's and Vikram's hands, holding them together in her own. "Forgive an old woman's doubts," she said softly. "I only wanted to protect my son from pain." "There is nothing to forgive," Mira assured her. "The letter belongs to a different life. But this family, this home we've built together, that belongs to now, to all of us." Later that night, alone in their bedroom, Vikram turned to Mira with questions still lingering in his eyes. "All these years you never said, 'Neither did you,'" she pointed out gently. "We built our life on what we could give each other, not on what we had lost. And is it enough?" he asked, voicing the fear that had lived in his heart since the day he had offered her his name, instead of the future she had planned with his cousin. Mira took his face between her hands, looking into eyes so familiar yet so different from those she had once loved. "It's not about enough, Vikram. It's about different. What we have isn't what I dreamed of at 22. It's what I choose at 32, with open eyes and a full heart." As they held each other in the darkness, the ghost that had silently occupied the space between them for 5 years finally began to fade. Not through forgetting, but through acknowledgement. The truth, finally spoken aloud, had not shattered their carefully constructed life. It had instead revealed its true foundation. Beyond the letters, the monsoon arrived early that year, transforming the Sharma garden into a lush paradise of dripping leaves and fragrant earth. 6 weeks had passed since the discovery of the letter, and while the initial shock had subsided, subtle changes rippled through the household like raindrops on still water. Mira stood beneath the shelter of the veranda, watching the downpour with a cup of chai warming her hands. The weight she had carried for 5 years, the careful balance of present devotion and past grief, had shifted. Not disappeared, but changed, becoming somehow lighter through acknowledgement. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Vikram's voice came from behind her as he joined her at the railing. "The gardens never looked better." Mira nodded, making space for him beside her. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the rain transform their world. Since the night of revelations, they had been rediscovering each other, speaking more openly, listening more deeply, touching with new intention. "I've been thinking," Vikram said finally, his voice thoughtful, "about our anniversary next month." 5 years, Mira mused. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime. Other times, like we're just beginning," he finished, turning to face her. "What would you think about renewing our vows?" Surprise flickered across Mira's face. "Renewing our vows. Not because the first ones weren't real," Vikram clarified quickly, "but because now we can make promises with full awareness of what we're choosing. No shadows between us." The idea settled over Mira like the gentle rain, unexpected but somehow right. "I'd like that," she said softly. Inside the house, another conversation unfolded in the kitchen, where Sunita was teaching Priya to make the special laddus that had been part of every Sharma celebration for generations. "Roll them gently," Sunita instructed, demonstrating the technique. "Too much pressure and they crumble." Priya followed her mother's example, her movements careful. "Like relationships," she observed thoughtfully. Sunita glanced at her daughter, surprised by the insight. "Yes, I suppose so. Especially marriages. I've been thinking about Didi and Bhaiya," Priya admitted, dusting her hands with flour. "About how their marriage began versus what it's become." "And what have you concluded?" Sunita asked, curious about her daughter's perspective. Priya considered the question seriously. "That love isn't always what stories tell us it should be. That sometimes it's built rather than discovered." Sunita nodded, pride warming her expression. "When your father and I arranged Vikram's marriage to Mira, we thought we were securing a good daughter-in-law, someone dutiful from a respectable family. We never imagined we were witnessing something so much more complex. Do you regret it? Arranging their marriage without knowing about Nikhil? How can I regret what has brought such harmony to our home?" Sunita replied. "Besides, I'm beginning to think that perhaps everything unfolded exactly as it needed to. In his study, Mohan was having a different conversation, this one with Vikram, who had sought his father's counsel about the vow renewal. I want to do this properly, Vikram explained. Not a grand celebration, but something meaningful. Something that honors both our journey and Mira's past. Mohan regarded his son thoughtfully. You've carried this knowledge about Nikhil and Mira for 5 years without resentment. Many men would have found that impossible. Vikram leaned back in his chair, considering his words carefully. I never saw it as something to resent. When Nikhil told me about their relationship, his happiness was so complete, so infectious. After he died, when I saw Mira again at the memorial service, so hollowed out by grief, I recognized something in her that resonated with my own loss. Nikhil was like a brother to you, Mohan acknowledged. More than that, Vikram said quietly. He was the person who taught me what love looks like when it's fearless. I never expected to find that kind of love myself. I'm too cautious, too practical. A small smile touched his lips, but I thought perhaps I could create a different kind of love. One built on understanding and patience rather than passion. And have you? Mohan asked, echoing his wife's question from weeks ago. Yes, Vikram answered without hesitation. Different from what they had, but no less real, no less valuable. A week later, the entire family traveled to Kashmir. The journey had been Mira's suggestion, a pilgrimage of sorts before their vow renewal. Together, they visited the memorial where Nikhil and 13 others who had perished in the avalanche were remembered. Yellow marigolds bloomed around the stone markers, their bright faces turned toward the sun. Mira knelt to place a small river stone among the flowers, a private token from that long-ago day when Nikhil had first told her he loved her. Vikram stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, steady and supportive. Thank you, she whispered, looking up at him, for bringing me here, for everything. That evening, in their hotel room overlooking the valley, Mira finally asked the question that had lingered in her mind since the letter's discovery. Did you ever resent him? For being your family's golden child? For having my heart first? Vikram considered this, his honesty one of the qualities she had come to cherish most. Sometimes when we were younger, he admitted. Nikhil seemed to move through life with such ease, making friends, charming elders, excelling at sports. I was always the serious one, the responsible one. And later, after we married? No, he said simply. By then I understood something important. We aren't rivals in your heart, Mira. We occupy different chambers of it. What you had with him taught you how to love. What we've built together has taught you how to choose love day after day, even when it's difficult. Mira's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of recognition. That's exactly it, she whispered. With Nikhil, love felt inevitable. With you, it feels intentional. Chosen. 2 weeks later, under the ancient banyan tree in the Sharma garden, Mira and Vikram renewed their vows in an intimate ceremony attended only by family. Priya had decorated the space with marigolds and jasmine, and Sunita had prepared a feast that honored both families' traditions. As they exchanged new promises, honest, clear-eyed vows that acknowledged both past and present, Mira felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. The letter that had once threatened to unravel their family had instead strengthened its weave, bringing to light truths that had needed voice. Later, as evening descended and lanterns illuminated the garden, Mira found herself sitting beside Sunita on a stone bench, watching Vikram laugh with his father and sister. I want to thank you, Mira said quietly. For what, Betty? For finding that letter. For having the courage to bring it into the light. Sunita took Mira's hand between her own. I feared it would destroy what we had built. I never imagined it would strengthen it. The letter reminded me of something I had forgotten, Mira explained. That love isn't just what we feel. It's what we build together. What we choose again and again. And you choose, my son, Sunita said, a statement rather than a question. Every day, Mira confirmed. Not because I forgot Nikhil, but because Vikram helped me remember how to live fully again. Different love, but no less true. As if sensing their conversation, Vikram looked up, catching Mira's eye across the garden. The smile they shared held 5 years of history. The grief they had honored, the trust they had built. The love they had chosen to nurture despite its unconventional beginnings. That night, after the celebration had ended and the household slept, Mira sat at her dressing table. completing a ritual she had privately maintained for 5 years. She opened the wooden box that contained her memories of Nikhil, adding to it the letter that had caused such turmoil and transformation. "I still keep my promises," she whispered to the memory of her first love. "I live fully. I love completely, just not in the way we imagined." Then she closed the box and placed it on the highest shelf in their wardrobe, not hidden anymore, but stored respectfully, like a volume of poetry one returns to occasionally with appreciation rather than longing. When she slipped into bed beside Vikram, he stirred, reaching for her hand in the darkness. "Happy?" he murmured, half asleep. Mira considered the word, too simple for the complex peace she had found, yet somehow perfect in its clarity. "Yes," she answered truthfully. "I'm happy," and she was. Not with the uncomplicated happiness of youth, but with the hard-won contentment of someone who had learned that the heart's capacity for love is not finite, that loving one person deeply doesn't diminish the ability to love another differently, but equally, truly. As rain began to fall again outside their window, Mira closed her eyes, no longer haunted by what might have been, but grateful for what was, a life built on honesty, strengthened by understanding, and illuminated by a love that had grown not in spite of grief, but alongside it. The forgotten letter had not exposed betrayal. It had revealed the complex, beautiful truth that sometimes the most authentic love stories aren't about passion's first bloom, but about the daily choice to nurture something that grows stronger, deeper, and more resilient with each passing season.